I'm Roger. I'm an alcoholic. I'm not appointed, anointed, or affiliated with any groups or organizations. So everything I share is my own experience. I've been sober since October 11th, 1978, which is 42 years and a couple of months longer than anyone thought possible, at least the doctors. So I have an experience of this. I have an experience with what works, and I have a great depth of experience of what doesn't work. So tonight, we're going to talk about steps 6 and 7. And this, I did if you have an app, I think that there's a retreat, a workshop I did on the app about this. I think it's called Turning Point. But anyway, it's an interesting spot in the steps. If you're new, and some of you are, this might not be apparent to you yet. There's a pivot. Everything in the first 5 steps is about me finding out what's in the way of me having the experience I want to have of my life, being the man I want to be, being the woman I want to be, being the person I want to be. And it's about what's in the way. And one of the reasons those first early steps are so challenging and difficult for some of us is because our addiction doesn't want us to look at it. And so it produces resistance, and the resistance is usually in the form of fear. I'm scared if I do this, I'm not going to like who I turn out to be, or shame. I'm too bad to get this. This won't work for me. It'll work for other people, but it won't work for me because I've done some unforgivable things. So in a really simple way, look at the preparation for these steps. 1, can I admit that I'm powerless over the substance and that my life's unmanageable? That's powerless over the substance, and it's also powerless over the management. And my ego doesn't like that. The false self doesn't. I don't mind being a drunk, and I can admit that. But to admit that I can't manage my own life, that's a harder one for some of us to swallow. Especially the more of a control freak you are, the harder it is to accept that, right? But what it's really pointing to is something behind the bottle, behind the drugs. And that is the failure of our self-reliance. That's what's failed me. The booze kept me alive long enough to get to you. The booze was the Band-Aid, and then it became the problem. It became its own infection. But the impetus for the drinking was the unmanageability that I had my whole life. So can I cop to that? And the step says we admit it. It doesn't say we surrender. Admit means to allow in. Can you allow in this idea? Not here. First, maybe here, but the truth of it happens in your heart. So, okay. The argument is, but I think I can manage my life. Well, we've all managed our lives. The question that I have to ask early in my recovery, if part of me is arguing about this unmanageability, is how satisfied am I with the results? Yes, you've been a manager. How do you like the outcome? Look at your relationship with money. Look at your relationship with the bank, with the credit card companies, with the law, with the doctors, with your family, if you have a family, with your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, if you have one, with your dog, with your gerbil. I mean, just look at it. Inability to maintain and establish meaningful relationships with other living beings. That's the failure of my management. That's the failure of self-reliance, because my self-reliance is rooted in fear and shame. And there's nowhere to go from that, right? So I start with this admitting, which is the beginning of the willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness riff that you hear in the meetings, but where it is it's in the spiritual experience appendix. It says willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are indispensable. Indispensable. So now I got a problem there because I'm not very willing, I'm not very honest, And I'm not very open-minded. So does that mean that I can't do this? Because when I thought of those things, I thought it meant you have to be 100% willing, 100% open, and 100% honest. It means I can't even get in the game. That's not what it says. It says they need to be present. If you and I can stand in front of the question of powerlessness and unmanageability, they're present. Now what we have to do is we have to build on that. And this is one of the spiritual architecture of the steps. Every step creates a little more honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness by nature of the question. So if it's true that I lack power, and that's why my life's unmanageable, then the solution must be find some more power. Find some different power. Find a power greater than me and the other powers that I have. I had a lot of higher powers. They just weren't effective. Fear was a higher power. Shame was a higher power. Money was a higher power. Sex was a higher power. Influence was a higher power, on and on. So it's not that we're not familiar with the concept. It's just we've never really tagged it in an understanding way. My thought was just interrupted. The person of faith has the same problem. Has the same problem as the other guy, because we're all seeking. And I was just reading this today. Richard Rohr's got a book called Immortal Diamond. And he talks about the hypocrisy of the search and the potential, not blanket, but the potential hypocrisy in the hiding in the dogma and the ritual of the religion and not having the religious experience. So the person who professes to be of a faith, aligned with a faith, there's no problem there, but you have the same problem as I do. Your life's unmanageable because you don't have a relationship with what you say you believe in. Because if I did, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Okay? So that leads us to the power question. And for some of us, that's an easy, I believe in God. Okay. For some of us, not, What about the atheist? That was me when I came in. I couldn't even pretend to come close to that idea. But when you examine the step, it says came to believe, which is the past tense. The thought came later that there was a power and it could restore me to sanity. So the minimum requirement here is I'm willing to believe in the possibility. And they told us that in the spiritual experience appendix. They said, most emphatically wish to say anyone capable of being honest in the light of our experience can recover. If you do what we did. If you do what we did, you can have this thing. And then it says, provided you don't close your mind to all spiritual concepts. Well, I don't want to be a liar and a phony in this thing. But the truth is, I don't believe in God. Because when I say God, I think about the God I was introduced to when I was 8 years old, not a working deal. Well, the way we get around that is they say, get your own concept. That's a big deal. That's a big idea. Get your own concept of a power greater than yourself. One that you're willing to grow towards. It doesn't have to be a fully blown theology. It's not what is God. It's not that. It's is there. And when I consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, it's possible there's a power greater than me, I'm also considering the possibility that maybe I've been wrong. More open mind, more willingness, a little more honesty. And for some people, this is a wow pow experience. Mine was like prying open a rusty chest, a rusty iron box. It was tedious. It was laborious. Okay. So to the best of my ability, can I answer yes to those questions? Am I powerless over the substance? That's have I lost the ability to control my drinking, predict my behavior? Yes. Cocaine, heroin, same thing. For our Al-Anon friends in the meeting, have I lost the ability to control my thinking and predict my behavior? Same concept. What I have attached myself to has failed me. I need to find something new to ground myself in. That's the God idea or the higher principles, right? So based on that, I conclude to go forward. That's the third step. We say a prayer, don't we? Made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood God. Praying all for knowledge of your will for me and the power to carry it out. God, I offer myself to thee. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, the victory over them may bear witness of those I would help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Period. Move on. So the decision, whether you use the prayer or fancy words or plain words, the decision is to go forward. There's no guarantee here. I want to know, if I do this, am I going to like the way it turns out? If I do this, if I give myself to this higher power idea, am I going to like the way my life works? Am I still going to have a sense of humor? Am I going to like the people in my life? You know, you talk about a fellowship growing up among you. I'm in a meeting in the 70s with a bunch of World War II veterans. I'm a rock and roll guy, 30 years old, with hair down to my waist, and I live in black leather. I'm sitting in this room going, this is my life. These are my new friends. Hard to believe. So based on the decision, now it changes. Doctor's opinion, Bill's story, there's a solution, more about alcoholism, we agnostics, all of that is there for you and I to compare our experiences and our ideas and our failures and successes with theirs. That is what I use to take the first two steps. The decision in the third step is I'm just not going to run the world anymore. I'm just not going to be the arbiter of my life and everyone else's, okay? Then the pace and the attitude changes. Then they go, next, fearless moral inventory. That sounds fun, right? Look at resentment, fear, and sex conduct. I'm just gathering data. I'm just gathering facts and answering questions. Who you pissed at? What'd they do? How did it affect you? How did you show up? Right? The fear inventory is all about the failure of self-reliance. Why do I have the fear? The fear is failure of self. The fear is social security or sex instinct that's not working correctly or in my favor. So there's a big emphasis in this outfit on honesty, isn't there? Honesty and thoroughness, they say. When in the fourth step, they said all through the book. Need to be honest, need to be thorough. Need to be honest, need to be thorough. I'm neither. So my first two fourth steps weren't written. So my first two fifth steps were oral. I will report to you, fruitless. Also shot through with lies. Just made stuff up. So I was trying to impress this guy and gross him out. And I was hoping he'd dismiss me. So now I haven't met the qualifications. I haven't been thorough and I haven't been honest. And when I did a written one, I was better, but I still wasn't completely honest because I left stuff off it. Why? Because I read ahead. And I'm supposed to do this fifth step with someone and tell them the truth about me. I'm not doing that. Fear and shame. Why? Because I'm afraid of your condemnation of me, and I'm afraid you're going to rub my nose in it and shame me, and then ostracize me, you know? Get out of here. You're way too sick for this outfit. And so fine, I have not met the requirements. I haven't been thorough and honest in the fourth step, and I haven't been honest in the fifth step. So looks like I'm going to hell, right? How does that work? This is, if you're struggling, this might help a little bit. Because this is the first pass through this process. And it's going to be redone, gone over for the rest of our lives in 10, 11, and 12. So being perfectly honest, Being honest, being thorough is a relative term. And I'm not encouraging people to not be honest and thorough. But what I am saying is my experience with this and what I've done with other people is quite simply, you can only be as honest and thorough as you are when you do the step. I have a problem. My illness is rooted in delusion. So even when I think I've been honest, I find more stuff later. That doesn't mean I did it wrong. What it means to me is the consciousness that I came to it with, I could only know so much because I couldn't possibly consider the rest. I've said this a lot to people when I work with them. If I would have known what I was going to discover in the first 10 years, probably would have run away. Probably would have run away. But the grace of God, if you will, the grace of the program, the gentleness of the steps only lets me see what I can handle. And that's okay, because I'm going to be able to handle more later, and I'm going to see more later. But that's when I'm more developed, right, and more practiced. So I'm not encouraging you to be willfully dishonest or incomplete, but what I'm saying is when we get to things like honesty and thoroughness, these are relative terms, because I've worked with guys that are much newer in recovery than me, and we're doing inventory. They're great inventory takers. They just don't learn anything from it. I had to put sponsees on inventory probation. No more inventory, no more damn lists. You got to do something with what you're finding. This is a program of action. It's not a program of mulling over and thinking and contemplation, although yes, those things are in it. So we get to 6 and 7, and I will refer to the book. So after this process of the 5th step, it's for those of you who want to know, I'm on page 75 in my book. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we've done, the first 5 steps. I don't tell people to go home after a 5th step and think about it and then do 6 and 7. I know that's what it says, but what I found is when you get done with a 4, 6, 8 hour 5th step and you say, go home now and take an hour when you get home and consider 6 and 7, they don't. I fell asleep, whatever. So when a guy that I sponsor is doing a 4th and 5th step with me, when he comes over for the 5th step, I know when he leaves, he's going to have an 8th step list. Okay. So here we go. First thing, after I carefully view what I've done, is I go to prayer. I thank God from the bottom of my heart that I know God better, the power better, the truth better. If you don't like the male pronoun, replace it. But you get the idea. When I got honest, I got grateful. I got peace I didn't deserve. I got a calmness I didn't deserve. And I also got fear, but I was able to handle it and not have it handle me. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, first 5 steps are proposals. Proposal for your new life, proposal for your new actions, proposals that you've accepted. Carefully reading. This is for me. Ask if you've omitted anything. There's the honesty question. There's the thoroughness question. Why? Because you're building an arch through which you walk a free man or woman at last. Metaphor. Is your work solid so far? That's like, have you omitted anything? Are the stones properly in place? Have you done something in an incomplete fashion? Or did you skip something altogether? I really don't have a good feel for this God thing, so I just kind of gave it a head nod and moved on. That will come back and bite you in the butt later. Have you skimped on the cement, the effort, the thought that goes into the foundation? The foundation for me is steps 1 and 2. Everything comes off that. my admittance that I need to find help in order to create manageability in my life. That's 1 and 2. I need to find a power greater than me that will restore me in my thinking. And I need to do it pretty damn quickly. So if you can answer to your satisfaction, if we can answer to our satisfaction, if I can answer to my satisfaction, which is what? That I've been thorough. If this is so important, because this is where it's important for me, because this is where it got me. I'm sitting here with this hypocrisy and dishonesty. I haven't told the guy I haven't written everything down the 4th step because I didn't want to go to jail if someone found it. And I didn't tell the guy for the same reason in the 5th step, the truth, all the truth. And I think traditionally you'll find the things you omit from 4 and 5 are the worst things that you have. It doesn't seem like it at the time, because when you're new, the worst thing it seems to be is around the drinking and the drugs, right? And the immediate problem. I might have some health problems. I might have some legal problems. I might have some money problems. Those things all seem to be more important. But the truth is, in a general way, what I left out of that was sex and money, which is 95% of my problem in life up to that point, right? So then they remind me, we've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Can you change your mind? Are you willing to direct your thinking in another direction? Are you willing to admit or open your mind to a new idea or concept? That's a choice. And I need to be honest, if the answer is no, then I'm building a house of cards. Never really did a 4th step, never did a 5th step. Oh, I see. Never did an inventory? Yeah, right. I wonder if that's why you keep relapsing. I don't know. What do you think? You know, so reminding myself, I don't know this when I'm new, but this whole thing is a search for God, is a search for a solution to our living problem. The living problem that I have in man's world, the 3-dimensional world with people, places, and things and concepts, and the living problem I have in here with the shame and the fear. And the problem is alive because my alcoholism, my addiction feeds off the energy of the fear and shame. That's how it stays alive. That's its sustenance. That's why when you're new and you're moving towards a solution, you feel like you're losing your mind. I feel like I'm going nuts. Half of me wants to find this solution and half of me says, run away. That's a good sign. I know it doesn't feel good when you're going through it, but what the truth of that is I have upset the beast. I have upset the addiction and it's fighting for control. Well, what does it do to fight for control? Creates chaos in our mind. Fear. What's going to happen? I don't know how to do this. I don't know if I'm ever going to get this. I'll never get out of this jam. For shame, after all I've done and all the people I've hurt, there's no hope for me. You know, it just goes on and on. That's its job. This is why it's really critical to have a companion, to have a sponsor to do this with, because they can walk you through it. 1, because they've been through it. And if they haven't, get another sponsor, right? And 2, because they're not emotionally involved in my stuff and they can help me get back to center. So the truth is, you've emphasized willingness and I haven't been too willing. So it says that we now really let God remove from us all these things we've admitted objectionable, are objectionable. Not what did you say that I did wrong? What did you say that I should feel bad about? But when you do a 4-step, one of the reasons you're so depressed and you're so anxious and you feel so much shame is because you're seeing the evidence of how you've offended your own self. In the Bible, it's called the I am, the true you, the spirit. The I am, The divinity within you, the God within you is what's been offended. I didn't know that existed. So it wasn't that I was bad, it was that I was mistaken, deeply and grossly mistaken. Okay? So are you now ready to let God remove all those things? No. No, I'm not. Thank you very much. The step says we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Well, there's certainly some I'd like removed, but the word entirely has got me a little turned off. What's the truth? I'm not entirely willing. I'm not entirely ready. It's an ideal. If you read this literally, you can't do it because I'm not entirely ready. So therefore, I'm disqualified from going forward. No, it's the best approach. You want the fast track? Be entirely ready. No arguments, no resistance, right? So how I made my peace with that took a while, but what I realized was as ready as I was entirely ready for me in that moment. Just like as thorough and honest as you could be when you did your 4-step, that's as entirely thorough and honest as you could be. And now this is as ready as I can be. Does that make sense? So I don't have to do it perfectly, but I do have to do it honestly with myself, right? So here's the grayed out. Can you take them all, everyone? What's the truth? No. Am I disqualified? No. He says, if you still cling to something you won't let go, we ask God to help us be willing. That saved probably my life. So what it says is, be honest with yourself. Now, I have been dishonest in this process to this point. Yes? Yes. The reason I did all the steps in front of this is because I want you to have, especially the new people, I want context. So here I am. I've been dishonest with myself in the 4-step. The excuse was, I don't want to go to jail. Don't want to get this. It's admissible in a court of law. It's a confession. I'm not doing that. And then the 5th step, I omitted truths. I wasn't honest. I wasn't completely honest. So now in 6 and 7, I have a chance to level the whole thing. Because what I got to be honest with is me and God. Me, if you don't believe in God, you and the truth. The truth will work. Now, when I got to this point, I went, oh, so all I got to do, I don't have to change here. I just have to pray for a change. So the honesty is, God, this is my attitude about money, and I don't, it's my attitude. I'm not willing to change it. But if you want me to change it, change my heart about it gently. And the same with anything I cling to. I pray for a different heart towards it, about it. And I always add gently, because sometimes these prayers can be really abruptly answered. It's not like that. I didn't want to stop smoking with a heart attack, so pray to change. I've used this for smoking, everything. So now I'm on the page. Now I'm on the page. And the 7th step is asking for the removal. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Now, we got a prayer for that, don't we? Our famous 7th step prayer. So it says, my Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. That means in spiritual terms, that means so be it. It is so established. The end. That's business is done. You notice there's no amen after the 3rd step, because the 2 prayers are really one prayer. I go the 1st step, and in the 3rd step, I'm saying, I'm offering myself to this process, the truth, the steps, whatever. And the point is to build with me and do with me as God or the truth or my higher power or the steps would have me be. Then I ask, this is a petitionary prayer, relieve me of the bondage of self. But the reason isn't so I feel better, it's so I can better do your will. I can better act along these higher principles. Take away my difficulties. It's not so I don't have difficulties. It's so my victory over those my victory over those difficulties bears witness to you that it's possible. Bears witness to those that I would help with God's power, God's love, and God's way of life. And then the request is, can I please do your will always? Then the other half of the prayer is my Creator. Now that I've gone through the process of 4 through 6, my Creator, God, truth, higher power, I am now willing, because I'm different now. I'm now willing, you should have all of me, good and bad. Interesting. What did you find from the 4th step? What I found was, I don't know the difference between good or bad. Because a lot of the things that were my deepest rooted character defects I thought were assets. Like my force of will, my drive, my ability to focus intensely. Turns out that was stubbornness and thick-headedness. So I pray, that's a beseech, a request, that you now remove from me, that God removes from me, because I can't remove this stuff from me. I'm more powerless over my fear and my dishonesty and my manipulation and my usuriousness than I am of the booze or the drugs. Take away everything that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. You and my fellows. So it's not everything. It's whatever is not useful. Whatever stands between me evolving my relationship with the God of my understanding and being helpful to you. Remember the mission statement, maximum service. Our real objective is to be of maximum service to God and our fellows. Period. Okay, that's the echo of that. So then I grant me strength. That's a gift. A grant is a gift. I'm granted strength as I go out from this point of decision to do God's will, to do God's bidding, to act out of these higher principles. Amen. Amen. Now it's done. See? And then the next thing you're doing is making a list in step 8. So I wanted to give you some context and some different ways to look at this, because one of the biggest impediments to doing this is the shame and the guilt and the fear. And this is part of how I navigated through that. And I hope it's helpful in some way, shape, or form. And now I'm going to stop the recording.